Hi everyone, my name is Matthew Gerrits and I'm the Vice President Education at the Federation of Students. You may have heard last week an announcement from the provincial government about changes to tuition, changes to OSAP, and changes to ancillary fees for university students. The changes to tuition, a 10% cut for domestic students, may sound really great, but I want to make sure that it's put in context so you understand what the effects of this announcement actually are. So, let's start with the tuition cut. The government announced that there would be a 10% tuition cut for domestic tuition in Ontario. Now, this might sound really good, but the changes to tuition mean that there are $360 million across Ontario that universities will not be getting because the government isn't making up that funding. It's being pulled directly out of their budgets. And that means that universities will either need to make more money, pull in more revenue, or cut costs. And that can mean cutting supports on campus, it could mean increasing class sizes, or it could mean raising tuition for international students who are not regulated under this new tuition framework. Universities could theoretically raise international tuition to whatever level they'd like, without any warning. Now, beyond just the 10% cut to tuition, which is good, which is something that we would like to see, there are also changes to OSAP coming. OSAP is the program that for Ontario students supports students while they're going through their post-secondary education. These changes to OSAP include changes away from grants, which is money that you're not going to have to repay to the government, and changing those grants over to loans, which is money that you will eventually have to repay. So essentially, it is a cut in the amount of funding that the government is giving to students. Now, as these grants are transitioned over to loans, this has been paired with another change, a change to the way that interest is calculated on these loans. Now, it used to be that you would get a 6-month grace period after you graduate before the interest starts accruing on your debt. That has been changed. Now, your debt will start accruing interest on day one after you graduate. Now, this means that you're not going to have the opportunity to get a steady job, even get your first paycheck before this interest starts accruing. There's a lot of things that you have to do once you graduate, a lot of things that you want to do after you graduate to get on your feet, and the government is not even thinking about that. That interest will be accruing on day one. So, these changes to OSAP, these cuts to the grants, are really concerning because I've looked at the numbers, and for almost every student at the University of Waterloo, there is going to be a significant financial loss. The cuts in tuition are not going to make up for the cuts that you are going to see in your grant funding if you are an Ontario student. And that doesn't even go to the point where if you're not an Ontario student, you still might see the effects of the university's budget having less money in it. Now, this is a really great concern to me and to the Federation of Students, because when we look at students, we want to make sure that students have the funding to be able to go through university and graduate without having an unserviceable amount of debt. And so, this is something that we are going to be pushing back on. More on that later. One final thing that you might have heard about when it comes to the Ontario government's announcement is changes to ancillary fees. Now, an ancillary fee is a non-tuition fee that you pay to the university to provide other services. Some are currently optional, some are currently not. The Ontario government is saying that all of these fees you should be able to opt out of. Now, that includes a couple of fees, one of which is the Federation of Students fee. Now, the problem with making it the Federation of Students fee opt-out means that the Federation of Students will not have a predictable amount of funding from term to term, and it might actually affect the services that we are able to provide to you. So, things like the health and dental insurance plan might see premiums go up where they've currently been low. We might not even be able to have a transit agreement with GRT anymore, because that agreement is predicated on actually being able to deliver fees from all students, because all students are Feds members, and that might not be the option going forward. Beyond changes to things like health and transit, there will also be changes to student experience on campus. We have Feds-run services here at the University of Waterloo, and these services fill important gaps in student life and student experience here on campus. Things like having a food bank, things like having a campus response team, things like having MATES, which provides peer-to-peer mental health support, are all in danger with the announcement of having these ancillary fees, of the Feds fee, being opt-out. And this doesn't even account for the fact that our club system will also not be able to be supported, where Feds currently supports it through insurance and through helping with accounting and providing funding to our clubs. We're not sure what that might look like down the road, and that concerns me too. One final thing that is going to be really quite concerning to me is that with less funding, with the ability to opt out, there are students that are going to be able to free ride on the advocacy that the Federation of Students does. Right now, we advocate to the university on things like co-op, on things like mental health, on things like international student tuition setting, which is all places that we've seen victories in the last year or 2 years. And really, I don't think it's fair that in the future, students who are paying money will be subsidizing these victories for students who have chosen not to pay, but will still reap the benefits. And one thing that we still don't know is how these changes to ancillary fees will affect our ability to hire part-time students across our commercial operations, but also in some of the things that Feds does for clubs, services, and in our advocacy portfolios. So, that's my explanation of what the government announcement means. And now I want to quickly touch on what the Federation of Students is doing. As your representative to government, I have met with our local MPPs from Kitchener and Waterloo to talk about what the changes to OSAP mean for student debt and what it means for your student experience to see ancillary fees become opt-out. We've also been working with the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance, which is the group that provides advocacy services on the provincial level for the Federation of Students. We've been working with them to collect stories about OSAP, because these stories are going to be important in setting the narrative around what these cuts actually mean and the effects that they will have. We've also been working with the Ontario Undergraduate Student Alliance to figure out what the actual nitty-gritty details of these opt-out ancillary fees will be, and how the government has or hasn't thought about some of the effects that it'll mean for student experience. So, we're doing this and a lot more, but we wanted to make sure that we gave you guys the opportunity to participate, because a student union is often only as strong as the voices of its members. So, if you look at the link in the description of this video, we have provided a form letter that can be sent to your local MPP. If you're an Ontario student, it's really important that you reach out to your local MPP. It's important that all MPPs, especially government MPPs, those in the PC party, understand that this is not an issue that just affects universities. It's not just an issue that affects university towns, but it affects the families and it affects the students that come from their own communities. So please check out the link in the description and send an email to your local MPP. The government has backed down on some policies before, a couple of them. A couple where people have been able to share the giant impact that the policies will have, share their stories, and we want to make sure that OSAP is one of those places that is a success story. One of those places where the government does back down. It's going to be a hard fight. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I think it's really important. And to give us our best shot at doing this, we're going to need your voices too. We at the Federation of Students are as concerned about these cuts as you are, because they are big and they are going to affect, if not you, many students that you know on this campus. So please take a couple of minutes, check out that email, and send it to your local MPP. Let them know that it's not fair to saddle students with additional debt. Let them know that education is already expensive enough and that we need affordable education in Ontario. So, that is what we have been doing, and we're hoping that you are willing to help. We will keep you updated as we learn more, and we will keep you updated on what we're doing. Thank you guys all so much for your time today and listening to me. Have a great one.